Good evening, 49er faithful. Welcome to another episode of Between Two Beards. I am your co-host, Rob Schuh, and to my, whatever side that is Randon McMahon. Randon, how you doing, man? I know before the show you were telling me that you got a little bit of a weather situation going on there in Big Texas. What's going on, man?
Yeah, I mean, it was like 75. I was wearing shorts to watch the game at Texas Live on Sunday, and now it's getting into the teens with some snow tonight. So it's a little bit of a Texas normal weather. If you don't like the weather, just wait 5 minutes, is what they say. So.
Now, is Texas kind of like Portland in that an inch of snow will shut down the entire city, or do you guys have plows and they're pretty good at cleaning it up?
No, I mean, this will be the third time. If it snows and it sticks, it'll be the third time I've been here in 7 years that it's stuck. Last year, though, the entire city pretty much was down when we got 5 or 6 inches. My favorite bar stayed open, and that's about it. But yeah, it might be no work for me tomorrow, so that'd be good.
Well, yeah, that's okay. I mean, snow days are a positive memory since our childhood days. I mean, I grew up on the East Coast having snow days and then moved to California, and I was like, wait, what do you mean? No more snow days? We just don't get snow here? We don't get any days off? And then we didn't get any earthquake days either, so it was the worst of both worlds.
Yeah, so we'll see how it goes on. I know that it might delay my camera from getting here. Sorry again, guys. In there, you just have to deal with, I might actually be broadcasting from Siberia in a little bit with how much snow we get. So
it may look like Siberia later on tonight. I hope there's no power fiascos. I hope that you are good, safe, and sound, and taken care of during said storm, and that bar stays open to take care of you as well. People are excited. By the way, I have something to throw out there for anyone who didn't see my mailbag show yesterday. They may not be aware that at the end of this program is going to be a special giveaway. We are going to be giving away one of these mugs right here on this program. There will be a trivia question associated with it. You are going to want to email that to 49ersmailbag@gmail.com. So you can get that email ready right now if you want to, but the trivia question isn't going to hit until the end of the program. And it will just be, email order of emails received. First person with the correct answer to get their email in will win one of these cups. You just have to include your address and then must be 18 years or older, I think, just because that seems right.
Well, I mean, fans already know the answer, and I already sent in my email, so tough luck there. But I'm just kidding. Yes, yeah. So be prepared, have that ready to go. After the last question and the last super chat, we'll send that question out to you and get you some memorabilia.
Yes. And we are going to be doing this several times during the off season. After I had my mug, the Cheers mug, break, I went on a little spending spree and acquired as many of these mugs as I could because they are limited. They're no longer being produced. And so it was, hey, if you want to have some into the future, got to stock up a little bit. So that's what I did. And you guys will be the beneficiaries of that.
Yeah, Karthik, I see you in the chat saying that you're 15. Just get a mailing address to an adult. So just all on the up and up if you win.
Yes. Good call. As long as your parents are in support of you getting a free mug, that is just fine by me. All right, let's get into that first topic because this one seems to be a trend for the 49ers. And I mean, not that we're going to go into any sort of negativity with this, but the 49ers season came to a close. And so there has to be some criticism of the game. There has to be some acknowledgement of failures to progress, failures to take it to the next level. And for me, this one is something that we've seen a couple of times by the San Francisco 49ers, 2 times most notably, but getting tight in the biggest moments. And to me, it's a combination that begins at the top of the 49ers organization with Kyle Shanahan. But it spreads down through the 49ers offense on the biggest stage. And it happened again Sunday. The 49ers are now the only team to blow a 10-point fourth quarter lead in the playoffs over the last 3 seasons. and they've done it twice. The 49ers are 3-2 with a 10-plus fourth quarter lead in the playoffs. The rest of the league is 23-0 over that time. So you saw it again Sunday. Randon, how do you see this breaking out? Do you agree that it's something that begins with Kyle Shanahan and drifts downward, or do you place the blame with somebody else?
Hey, if we're to say wins is not a QB stat and the whole team wins, that includes the coaching staff, in my opinion. And so, obviously Shanahan's record speaks for itself. I think throughout the entire playoffs, they've only scored 9 points since the Atlanta loss to New England. And that's when Matt Ryan was an MVP. And so his teams need to perform better in the clutch moments. And maybe that is his play calling. Maybe that is the team's not executing. You saw with the game right before us, towards the end, Joe Burr, as they call him over there in Cincy, getting dragged down by almost 2 defensive linemen and still finding a way to win games. So sometimes when you're the quarterback and you're getting paid that much, you need to execute, and the coaches need to call the right calls. We'll get into the segment in the fourth quarter that we both thought was the pivotal point in the game later on. But I think they go hand in hand, and calling the right plays at the right time and then executing. You look at PFF came out with a thing today. Patrick Mahomes is number 1 in yards, touchdowns, and completions when run outside the pocket by pressure. So, when you have a quarterback that can perform under pressure, when you have a quarterback like Burrow who performed under pressure and got the win. I mean, if you look at his team, though, the safety got the pick in order to put him in the position to win games. Before that, the team that won the coin toss was 10-1. So it goes hand in hand. You got both ways, teams stepping up. And ultimately, if I were to say to you blindly before the game started, if the Niners held the Rams to 20 points, do you think we get the W? And I think over 95% of the fans would say yes. I mean, would you?
I think so. I tended to agree. I believe it was Jack Hammer was on the program and mentioned the 24-point cutoff, and if the Niners could just hold them to 24, and it was sound logic to me. I thought this was going to be a higher scoring game than it ended up being. I thought both offenses would have a bit more firepower, but you bring up a couple of very interesting points that I do think factor into this. The one is obviously executing. It is simply executing the plays that were called. So in the way that they're designed, completing the passes as they are designed. And you saw the early shot to George Kittle where the throw was off, obviously on Jimmy Garoppolo. And I thought on several occasions the offensive line was not able to execute in this one. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time berating them for that. I think to me that was potentially as a result of injuries and other factors that we'll certainly get into later. But the other point that you bring up is the most fascinating one to me, and that is potentially having a quarterback that can overcome any tightness within scheme. So if you have a head coach that tends to get a little bit more conservative with a lead or in big moments, to have that playmaking quarterback that is able to, outside of scheme, outside of what's being asked of them within the offense, is just able to deliver on another level. And that certainly is not Jimmy Garoppolo, but it could potentially be Trey Lance.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you're getting, and you need both. I mean, you could see that, Mahomes and Burrow and everything like that can deliver within a system, and they don't do it themselves. I mean, Kelsey and Tyreek Hill and Chase and all those guys are supreme athletes in their own right, and so with Jimmy Garoppolo having Kittle and Deebo Samuel and all those guys, you have those athletes. We saw the touchdown from Deebo went 40-something yards. And so, it's just it's something, the fact that you need to have everything to coincide to win a Super Bowl. And ultimately, it's a very tough thing to do. And the fact that the Patriots, where Tom Brady did it 7 times is just baffling. The fact that some franchises have never won any. And they had phenomenal talent there too. So, I think it comes to me is that, the last 2 drives, 6 plays, negative yardage, not even whistling at a positive scenario. And then the drive before that, which we'll get to, like just ramming it down their throats and then complete stop. And we talked about this multiple times throughout the year, is that, Jimmy has, led the league in fourth quarter comebacks and game-winning drives in 2019, was top in this category, or one of the top people in this category. I think Ben Roethlisberger actually won this category. But part of having game-winning drives or winning it on the last drive means the game's close.
Right.
And we've had multiple times this season being up in the second half. Again, this time 10 points in the fourth quarter, allowing other teams to get in it to set up a quote-unquote game-on-winning drive when necessarily you could have put the team away. And that's why they were near 500. I think they were below 500 until the playoffs in one-score games. And it just didn't really bode well. It seemed like a coin toss-up. It seemed like a lot of heart-throbbing plays and endings to a game, which either led in disappointment or satisfaction. And this time it was definitely the former.
That's a great point, that when you have so many close games, one-score possession games, eventually one of them isn't going to go your way. And that's the bummer, but also the magic of the NFL postseason, where it's one and done. And, had they played the Rams 5 times, the Niners just might have pulled out 3 of them. But in this one, just wasn't enough. Bringing in Jonathan here with the super chat. Love him or hate him, Jimmy's era gave us a hell of a ride. I'm grateful and thankful. This team reminded me of the We Believe Warrior team. Agree. I do agree. I have some phenomenal memories of Jimmy Garoppolo's time here with the San Francisco 49ers. I look back on 2019 as a very magical season. I had the opportunity to be at both of the playoff games in Levi's Stadium. I shared the NFC Championship game with my brother and his wife, and in the Super Bowl to be there in Miami, even though it ended in heartbreak, it still was a memorable experience. And I happen to be perhaps in the minority, but I happen to be in the group of people that does not subscribe to the idea that if you fail to bring home a championship, a Lombardi trophy, that means a season was a complete bust. To me, the magic is in the journey. And over Jimmy Garoppolo's time with the San Francisco 49ers, there's been a lot of magic.
Yeah, you got to be thankful for the positive times. If you're always, I think that the standard is different for teams that haven't won a Super Bowl or multiple Super Bowls. The standard for fans are different. And we talk about when your fandom starts versus when it ends and your purgatory, but I've never been conscious enough or have a wherewithal enough to witness a Niners Super Bowl that I remember. I mean, I was alive during the one in the 90s, but like my mom, like we said last week, my mom's not a fan. My dad doesn't even like football. And so I wasn't, aware of that era, right, other than watching or remembering. And then when you're in single digits in age, it's hard to remember almost anything. But
yes.
So for me, it's like I've never won one. And so the Kaepernick years and now the Jimmy years have been special. I mean, they don't rival some of the fans who watch Montana are young, but they're special. And to have, essentially 2 NFC championships, games or opportunities to go to the Super Bowl in 3 years. And then the only lost years were because of injury. I think that shows what could have been even further if there was health involved, and then just being appreciative of what we went through there. And, I've never had an opportunity to witness an elite quarterback in my team either. I mean, Kaepernick played out of his gourd that 1 year, but overall, both Jimmy and Kaepernick weren't elite. And I think that's what fans clamor for when you have a dynasty that is the San Francisco 49ers is those players that remind them of Joe Montana and Steve Young.
Yeah, it's hard to live up to that legacy. Once you have that generational talent, and then you happen to have one back to back, Joe Montana to Steve Young. And, oh, by the way, you have a very good quarterback in Jeff Garcia early on in the 2000s to continue a bit of that rich tradition. It then creates an expectation, and it's hard to get back to those expectations.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah,
here.
Go ahead. Hold on. Let me celebrate Rob Smith here, newest sneakerhead on the channel. Rob Smith, great name. Welcome to the channel. All right, please ask away, Randon.
Yeah, I saw this. I forget who posted it up, but they mentioned the Favre and Rodgers tandem,
right?
And they've only won 2 Super Bowls in the multiple decades that they've been back to back, but they've won a lot within those years. And they almost said like, oh, I'd rather not have like an elite quarterback and be teased every year and only win 2 Super Bowls than whatever. And I kind of laughed at that because the ultimate goal is winning,
right?
Winning the Super Bowl regardless of it. I mean, I don't know how you feel, but I would rather have a winning franchise and only win one than not win any at all.
Yes, and I would go one step further. To me, winning is everything, and putting together competitive seasons matters. Getting into the playoffs matters. Those regular season wins matter. Those are all positive experiences as a fan. Yes, a championship matters more, but I would go even further to say I would trade being relevant every single year and winning 2 Super Bowls for being relevant only 3 years out of 15, but winning a Super Bowl in those 3 years. I would rather have consistent production and consistent trips to the Super Bowl than to just get one, to push all your chips in and then have a team that falls off for the next 5 or 6 years. Now, if you dangled a single Lombardi in front of me right now with the 49ers, because it has been so many years since we've won any, I might answer differently. But even in that, what I will say is that the winning matters to me. The winning matters. Getting to the playoffs matters. And so I have a hard time overlooking that and not being grateful for it.
Yeah, with me not seeing the Niners win one, with me seeing so many rebuilds with the A's, it makes me lucky that I've seen the LA Kings win 2 Stanley Cups, because I would give anything to see either the A's or the Niners win a championship, even if it meant detriment for a decade plus for that team. But just all the trials and tribulations, and you saw it in the press conference today, that the heartbreak with Shanahan having been so close so many times, and like it makes them hungry to win one. And I hope that the boys that are left over from this team, when the roster's all settled come next summer, are ready to go back for the hunt.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. We are recharged by the time we get there. That's the nice thing. As of right now, that seems like such an uphill slog because I'm still processing this, I should say. Let's get back to processing and talk about the fact that the 49ers had to basically act as if they were in the playoffs for 5 or 6 weeks continuously. And that is emotionally exhausting. Not to mention physically exhausting. In week 18, they have to come back from down 17 against the Los Angeles Rams in SoFi. Then they've got to travel to Dallas and take on the #1 offense. They almost allow a comeback in that, and so therefore it's close until the end. The Packer game is an incredible physical matchup between two teams that by the end, they were both battered and bruised and abused by the elements out there. For anyone that was not there in Lambeau, I just don't think people actually realize how brutal those elements were. 5th coldest game at Lambeau Field in the playoffs, and that is saying something for Wisconsin. That is not weather for the timid. And then you saw it in this one, that there were a large number of plays for the Rams in the first half. It ended up that the Rams ran 76 plays to the Niners 50 and held the ball for 15 minutes more than the San Francisco 49ers did, converted 11 third downs. And I heard it on Matt Mayoko's podcast, and I agree that it felt a little bit as if the Rams flipped the script on this one, as if the Rams took a page out of the 49ers playbook and really they were the aggressor in this one. They were the more physical. My assertion is it has a little bit to do with the Niners running out of gas.
It's kind of, you look at the team stats here, and like there's some stuff that doesn't make sense on both sides, right? I mean, Rams 11 for 18 on third down. The total number of plays and the total yardage, you would think this would be a slobber knocker, but again, they only put up 20 points. And the yards per play, actually the Niners outproduced the yards per play 5.6 to 5.2. It's just a weird game. And like I bring it up again, like if you were to, I would have bet almost anything that if the Rams scored only 20 points, we win this game. And so, as far as ending the season and me backtracking in what you talked about, yeah, maybe, but I mean, it's tough to, when you have win or go home games in the playoffs in general, and before that, maybe it's emotionally exhausted. But I think guarantee that the Niners being up 10 in the fourth quarter, those players weren't exhausted. Those players weren't thinking about, oh man, like this is such a daunting task. They were ready to go to the Super Bowl again. And so for me, the emotional exhaustion doesn't really make sense to me. It's the execution that makes more sense in how often that you get away with it. They ran out of gas about being lucky, about getting those fourth quarter, the last minute drives to get going, or the blocked field goals, or this or that. And in close games, we talk about it all the time. Everybody talks about it. All you need is a couple plays to change the tide of a game, and they didn't go our way this time. And the offense was garbage in the second half, for lack of a better word. And so, yeah, they did run out of gas. I mean, they couldn't run the football at all. They didn't show up to the game with a tank in the running game, period. And that we talked about it last week. I mean, if you, I think the Rams did a great job on and how to beat us, and how that you would beat the Niners, and they executed that to perfection, I thought.
Yeah, I thought so as well. And you know what I find to be a bit ironic is, I think for me, for many people who speak about the 49ers, and for many of the faithful, going into this one, the thought was, Kyle, just do not abandon the run. Even if it's not working, don't abandon the run. And to me, the irony is in this one that's basically what he did early on in this one, that it wasn't working. It was getting 0, 1, 2 yards, if that, initially. And he did stick with it in the first half. Now, the 49ers weren't able to really get drives going, and so the number of runs didn't add up. The Rams controlled the time of possession. They had those very long 49er-like drives that kept the 49ers offense on the side of the field. But you look back, and because of the Rams selling out to stop the run, you almost wonder if this was the time where Kyle should have abandoned it a little bit. And the reason that he didn't is not trusting who he has behind center, or at least acknowledging those limitations that you have with Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah, I mean, so you can say one of two things. In Week 18, the Rams were playing like they were this weekend, and then they stopped it in the second half, and that's why we were able to come back. And so, they were selling out against the run. So you could either say, hey, okay, Shanahan, make a change in the way you're calling the game, allow for that kind of stuff. But there was a lot of stuff that was baffling, and I think like Shanahan didn't give Debo the ball the whole fourth quarter, like intentional play to get him the ball. Mitchell was running, I think, 1.2 yards per carry, all this kind of weird stuff. And it just, there's a lot of stuff that didn't make sense. And then you just need the guys to step up. And like, for me, I'm just baffled. I don't know if it's the fact that I had a fried bologna sandwich and I'm just on food coma right now or what, but I'm just baffled on why we lost this game. Like we had it in hand. I'm just tired of being up by 10 points in the fourth quarter. And then just like pretending that we're on cruise control. Like we're in such a big point. It's such a big game. Like, why are we putting it on cruise control? We're not driving down I-5. Like we are in a big game here. Like it just seemed none of it made sense.
Yeah, that is fair. That is fair. Now you got me hungry. Talk about fried bologna sandwiches. Rob Smith coming in here. Hi, guys. What differences do you see between the Jimmy offense and the Trey offense going forward? Rob, my answer would be that I hope we don't see too much difference schematically, that I hope Coach Shanahan runs a very similar offense, just with Trey's physical gifts included in the game plan, that allows for the same passes over the middle that generate yak yards, that allow for the same successful running game, but then add in considerably more deep shots, because Trey Lance has a hell of an arm as compared to Jimmy Garoppolo, significant deep play action shots, and something that takes advantage of Trey's legs, which to me, the obvious is play action, rollout, deep shots down the field, because he is a cannon where he can spray it all over the field, not just to the wide side where he's running, but also the dreaded throw back across the field, because he has a cannon that can get it there before a defender can make up that distance. But in general, I want to see basically the same offense, just with more firepower at quarterback.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I think the stretch in the field is going to help the run game a little bit. And I think there's going to be more intricacies to the run game. You saw in the press conference today that Shanahan plans on using Debo similarly next year. And so when you have Mitchell, Debo, Trey Lance, if they re-sign Mozart or Maserati to be a change of pace back, or it's Trey Sermon finally getting an integral part in the offense, either way, that's 4 weapons you got there. Juice will be there. And so you're looking at the extending the play downfield is going to help the run game. I think that you're going to see design runs. Do I want them to be between the tackles with Trey Lance? No, I don't. Do I want them to be like a rollout option? So you roll out, if the pass is there, take it. If they're playing deep zone, then just run, get 5-6 yards and go out of bounds. Maybe some of those design runs. Who knows? Trey seems like a pretty smart kid.
Very smart.
But I think the biggest aspect we're going to see is the deep ball opening up the run game, not allowing them to stack 8 in the box and everything like that. So that's what I'm hoping to see, and I think that's what the difference will be. But I think Mr. Schuh is right over there, is that we want to see the same offense, just with a more athletically gifted quarterback running it. And, Trey's going to have to step up to the table. The timing routes in the middle of the field are an integral part to the offense. Hitting those slants and allowing the yards to work are an integral part in the offense. And he's shown to be proficient at that. And sometimes, like in college, struggled with that earlier on this year, whether that was nerves or that was pure talent. I think it's more the beginning, and the fact that he was a little nervous coming out, sailed some balls. But we've seen that with Jimmy. He sailed some balls that were wide open throws, especially in this game in the beginning.
No question. Caligula coming in saying, at Rob, it's not only on Trey Lance to be ready as the starting quarterback, it's on Kyle Shanahan too. He needs to design a playbook for Trey Lance in his new throw the ball downfield skills. Kyle Shanahan himself has to grow and develop with Trey Lance. I like the last part of that the best, that Kyle Shanahan has to grow and develop with Trey Lance. I think that it's basically the same offense, incorporating more shots down the field that will open up the run game in many ways. Teams will not be able to stack the box as the Rams did in this one. Let's get back into our topics at hand for this game and talk about not just running out of gas and the inability to get a few yards, but a string of a few specific plays that Kyle Shanahan referenced. And quite honestly, you could say it's 4 plays and not 3, but I'll break down the ones that we're talking about here. Those 3 plays that we're talking about come after Elijah Mitchell gets 9 yards on first down. This is the drive with about 10 minutes remaining in the fourth quarter. And
the drive starts at 13:27.
13:27. And so we get to that portion of the drive after that first down, 9-yard run by Elijah Mitchell. It's 2nd and 1. The Niners run the ball 2 consecutive times, manage to lose 1.5 yards, basically, end up at 4th and 2. And then have to punt. Don't have to, decide to punt. And there's potentially criticism there, although I'm old school enough at that point in the game. To me, at 4th and a long 2, it was an easy punt decision. I'm not sure I liked the 2 calls leading up to that, the 2 run plays that were actually thrown in there. But Kyle Shanahan had some things to say about it himself. This is Kyle Shanahan's own words. We thought the game was exactly the game we wanted up to that 2nd and 1. When Elijah Mitchell was stopped for a 1-yard loss. Shanahan said, the 2nd one, I'll be thinking about that for a long time, he says. And then the 3rd and 2, that next play when Kyle Juszczyk was stopped for no game before a 49ers punt. Then the play right after that, just the chance to get the pick. It was those 3 plays in a row that we had our opportunities and we didn't come through on those 3 plays. And after that, it kind of changed into a game we didn't like as much. It really did. It felt like a momentum shift in the stadium. I felt the air come out of the stadium. When we were unable to get the first down, that was one thing. But then immediately after the punt, to have Matthew Stafford make that errant throw that basically looked like 3 flies up, looked like a punt to Jaquiski Tartt. I mean, quite honestly, I barely noticed that he dropped it at first. I was immediately into celebration mode in the stands there. And then obviously there was another play that came right after that with Jimmy Ward, the allowed catch to Cooper Kupp, and then the shot to the head, which was really Cooper Kupp getting down a little bit. Jimmy Ward, unfortunately, hitting him in helmet to helmet, but a 15-yard addition, so 45 yards on that play. Just momentum wildly swung in the Rams' favor in that one. It was a rough series of plays.
Yeah, and I think you look at the previous couple plays, right? So in that starting the drive, like I said, 1st and 10, 21-yard pass to Elijah Mitchell out of the backfield. Then you had an incomplete pass to Ayuk, and then a 12-yard pass to Deebo Samuel, his pretty much his only play of the fourth quarter there. And so you're looking at, wow, man, 33 yards right away. We're already over midfield after the run from Mitchell. And then it's 2nd and 1. And they went up the middle. And so I think when you looked at how they explained it in more deep, they lined up, ran that play earlier. But this time the Rams made an adjustment and dropped Weddle into the box, and they put him on the line of scrimmage. So typically in that play, you need a wide receiver to block that safety. And considering he was in the box behind, like right in front of the guard, that couldn't have happened. And so you're being outnumbered. And not only that, they were outnumbering the box all game. And so pretty much Mitchell ran right into Weddle, and Weddle broke the line of scrimmage and stopped that. And, I think you've asked anybody, including Shanahan, if you had 2 plays to make 1 yard, you'd bet on the Niners in that situation. So then, the next one they bring in, Trent Williams reported as eligible.
Big Trent Williams.
They ran the motion, and in both previous games, putting on tape, and this is one thing that I really like about Shanahan. He runs variants of plays that he put on tape the week before. Both those plays with Trent Williams in motion, they ran the ball outside. So if you're the Rams, you're thinking, okay, if Trent Williams lines up in the backfield or runs in motion and is declared eligible, this play is trying to get outside. They're trying to use his athleticism to get to the numbers out there, and we need to be ready for that. But they run it straight up the middle with Juice and get stomped. And so do I think that's the wrong play, running with Juice maybe over like a Deebo Samuel or something like that? Maybe. But then if you're the defensive coordinator for the Rams, aren't you preparing for Deebo Samuel? So it's like the catch-22, the double-edged sword. So, like, I can't really tell you if I like it or don't like it. Like, I like the creativity.
It's tough. It really is.
But I think in hindsight, you're like, okay, I don't like it. I mean, fullback dive or whatever, even with your running the motion, I don't like it. But with everything the Rams know about where the Niners want to give the football to, and what the team is and what they like to do, running a fullback dive might seem like the biggest diversion to get the first down. And he kept saying that 4th and 2 is the same thing as 3 and 2. So I think that if they would have got even a half yard or a yard on that play, he's going for it on 4th and 1.
I agree.
It's almost like they called that play to set up the next play, but that play was such a garbage result that it kind of derailed the plans. I still would have went for it. I know that game's close, and in hindsight, you're like, oh, like the punt was killer and whatever. But they make either one of those 3 plays, this game has a higher percentage for us to win, not necessarily guaranteed that we win the game, because a first down on the 45-yard line isn't even field goal range and all that kind of stuff like that. But it definitely changes the outlook or the barometer or the win percentage that we possibly could have had.
Agreed. To me, I think the first of the 2 plays was the one that I have the bigger issue with. Once you see Weddle come up to where he was in the box, I mean, credit to Eric Weddle. Hell of a play. The guy just comes off the freaking couch and he dives into the backfield, eludes Trent Sherfield, who's trying to make what is, by physics standards, basically an impossible block. But that to me is the issue, that when you get to the line and you see that you have the outside edge who Juice is going to have to go outside to block, and then you have the inside blitzer potentially coming in Weddle playing in the box, and Sherfield's going to need to get behind Juice in order to make that block. Once you get to that point, it should have been an audible out of it or some type of a timeout. But it's 2nd and 1, and so you can't waste a timeout at that point. And so I can't really get mad at that. But schematically, that seems like a mismatch that should have been changed at the line of scrimmage, or at least altered the protection in some way.
I agree with you. Sorry, I didn't mean I thought you were finished there.
Quite all right.
I always wonder like what the dynamic is within Shanahan's offense on the ability to call audibles. What was the audible play? Like, was the audible play something similar to where either play would have not worked? Was it going to be a pass? Was Shanahan like running up the middle at 2nd down? Don't call an audible. Like, I don't trust you, Jimmy. Like all those little small nuances within the headset. Like we'll never know.
Nope.
But it seemed like you said, when you saw him advertising that they're blocking the middle. Now, granted, you could just be like, hey, I don't really care. Like, we'll go mano a mano. We're going to get 1 yard anyways. But if your thought process was 4th and 2 is the same thing as 3 and 2, which means technically you have 3 plays to get 1 yard, why not call an audible?
Right.
Like, why not? Like, okay, if all I have to do is get 3 yards or 1 yard in 3 plays, why not take a chance on the first play and see if it sets something up or get a gashing play down the field? Yeah, it just baffles me there. Like
It makes you wonder if in that moment Shanahan's lack of trust in Jimmy Garoppolo prevented them from taking advantage of it, right? I mean, ideal time.
His sphincter is just so tight in the game situations that he
Yeah.
doesn't trust himself to make the right call.
It could be. That very well could be. And then I do just want to say on the third play in that series, Jaquiski Tartt, I am going to spend zero time beating up on Jaquiski Tartt. Matter of fact, I'm going to do the opposite, because while he failed to make that play, and yes, that's regrettable, he came to the podium and said just as much. He
was a
came to
man.
social
Yeah.
media and said just as much. That guy deserves so much respect for that. I mean, people shy away from that criticism. People don't come out and say honestly what it meant to not make that play. He bared his soul in doing that, in saying you live for that moment. As an athlete, you prepare your entire life for that moment. That moment arrived and I fell short. I have so much respect for him as a human being, as a man, as a football player, that I just will not criticize him for failing to make the play. People fail to make plays all the time. And it just is a stand-up dude who comes forward and takes the heat squarely on the chin.
Yeah, I mean, and you look at his season, right? Signed for practically nothing because of his injury history. Came back, proved everybody wrong. With the play of Hufanga in the preseason, people were calling for his job before week one. At least some people were on Twitter, and he had a phenomenal season. And we've said this over and over again. You know, the how well they play in preventing big plays. The safety tandem doesn't often make big plays as far as turnovers go. I mean, Ward has had more than expected. He had one in this game on the season, but they do a good job at preventing, dynamite plays down the field. But that was pretty much a punt, and he should have came down with it. And it just really sucks that you have the biggest moment of possibly your life in your career, and late in his career too, right? He's going to be in his ninth season next year, coming off a year where he's making, I think, less than $1 million on a free agent class that is, what I've seen so far, I haven't done much research, is pretty deep in safeties, and recency bias is huge, you know, and so, he might have lost himself more than just the game, but a couple $1 million with that play. And I'm sure all of us fans still remember it, and I'm sure he repeats it in his dreams every single night for a while now.
Yep, I will give him credit for the potentially game-saving tackle the week prior in Green Bay, where he hustled across the field, makes that tackle on Aaron Jones. Without that, we're potentially not in this game in order to miss that interception.
And I really want to reiterate what you said. I think he really took the man way of responding to that. Was definitely heart in the sleeve type approach. Yeah, you just feel for the guy. I think. He's been with the team for a long time, one of the longest 10 years on the team. And it just makes you sad, not only because for the fans and the way we lost that game, but you make it sad for him because he makes that big play. It didn't look like there was very many people in front of him. That's probably a 20-yard return, maybe longer with a broken tackle here, a good block there. And that puts us in at least field goal range to put us in a higher probability of winning that game. It just bummer.
Real bummer. M49er coming in. Jimmy G, not a good playoff quarterback. Choke in big moments. I think that there's very little to be said for some of Jimmy's fourth quarter performances, other than acknowledging, sorry, I didn't mean to take that comment down. That is a fair comment. Other than acknowledging this to be fairly true, that he may be capable in those moments. You've pointed it out that in other big moments, in fourth quarter comebacks, he has not shied away. However, on the biggest stage in the playoffs, yes, I do think it's fair to acknowledge he has pretty atrocious numbers, especially when you look at the fourth quarter of this game and the fourth quarter of the Super Bowl in 2019. They are pretty brutal, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, he is who he is, and I think a lot of people, we don't win the Packers game without him, right? No. I mean, the field goal to win the game, he threw some dimes to put us in field goal position, and so he is who he is, and I think you're going to get the plays where you're scratching your head, like overthrowing. I think it was Kittle in this game in the first quarter that probably could have been a touchdown, and so you're looking at those types of plays, and then the picks. And then sometimes you're like, man, that was just a great throw, or man, that was a great read, or what have you. And then you got to give him real props to playing with a torn ligament in his hand the whole time. And so you're going to get both. You're going to get both when you get Jimmy Garoppolo, and
Yeah.
and it sucks that we possibly don't know like what he could have been. I mean, I guess you're saying that's a purely hypothetical statement now, what I'm about to make, but if he was healthy in the other 2 years, like, do we get 3 national championship or NFC championship games? Do we get 2 Super Bowl appearances with how stacked our team was?
Right.
But his play this game, I mean, around a 50% completion percentage, didn't move the ball at all in the fourth quarter. It really something that he could have stepped up a lot bigger in this game.
I want to bring up some nuance to this answer, because I did acknowledge that he had those couple of fourth quarters that were rough. And in order to give the complete picture, Mr. Cartier 7 is correct that Jimmy Garoppolo did get to 2 championship games in 3 seasons. So you do have to acknowledge his ability to get there on the biggest stage in those big moments, shied away a little bit. And so that becomes the storyline. But when you tell the complete picture of Jimmy Garoppolo, you have to mention that. And it is true that you rewrite history a little bit. People forget Joe Montana certainly lost several playoff games, never lost a Super Bowl, that's for sure. But I think that, when we tell the complete picture of Jimmy Garoppolo, it has to be a little more balanced like that.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's two NFC championships in 3 years. Not many teams have been to a NFC championship, let alone won one like in 2019. So it's just the whole team has been a really good team, and he's not the driver of that, but he's definitely done some points. This team doesn't even make the playoffs if he doesn't get half of his fourth quarter comebacks this season. So if he doesn't get half of those that he rightfully came and rightfully helped the team at, we don't even make the playoffs. And so you got to give him his credit when it's due. Is he an elite quarterback? No, we all know that. He is who he is. People need to stop comparing him to the elite players. The whole team as a whole is what wins us games, and like, just like, be okay with it. Like, you can't have the best burger every time you go out to eat. Sometimes you're going to get some mediocre burgers, and just be okay that you're having fun and eating out. Like, we went to the NFC Championship. Like, people are sitting home at their couches. Like,
yes, it's important to be grateful for those moments. I love that sentiment.
Jonathan, like the Bengals. Like we said last week, the Bengals couldn't even text the last time they won a playoff game until this season. And so, just like, like, you can be mad at Jimmy or you can be upset about the loss, but overall, like, we've had a pretty good small little run here while he's been the quarterback.
I agree. Jonathan, coming in, I think we should have run a hard play action on that second one and a reverse on the third down play. Could have had more creative play calling. Hindsight is 2020, and so you needed to do something different in that moment. What I love about the second down suggestion there is it would have taken advantage of the Rams absolutely selling out. And I do have to go back to the trust between Kyle Shanahan and Jimmy Garoppolo, and Randon called it out, potentially the trust Kyle Shanahan has in himself, given how some of these moments have shaken out for him, that he may have felt less inclined to attack in that moment. And that is a shame, because his ability to be creative is what makes him so special as a play caller. And in that moment, just shied away from it a little bit.
Yeah, I don't necessarily agree with the call in the reverse. I think Jonathan is maybe thinking like a big home run play. I thought lining up Trent Williams was pretty creative. Like I said, they put those plays on tape to run the ball outside. They ran something antithesis of that. But I also think that you put the ball in the hands of your biggest playmakers when it really counts. And so on 2nd and 1, if it's a hard play action, great. If you just drop back and throw the ball in a slant to Debo or Kittle and hope they beat their man one-on-one because they're the best athletes on your team, I think that's a play that you run with as well, because big players make plays. And sometimes you don't have to get creative with it and beat your man. And I think that's what they thought they were going to do on 2nd and 1. But as soon as Weddle jumped in the box, I mean, a slant one-on-one with Debo or a little stop route with Kittle, I would have taken the money on those plays as well.
Yeah, I have more issue with the second down play than with the third, and I like the suggestion of the play action in there, but agree on the third down, probably would have run something different. NorCal Refrigeration and HVAC coming in. Did you see Brunskill not move on third down final drive, letting Rams defender free rush? Terrible O-line, was not championship caliber. The O-line definitely got beat up, and that's a good transition into our next topic there. We'll be right back for some of these super chats. And NorCal, we are going to hit this in a little more depth. I mean, I will just say as we transition into this topic that I agree. The offensive line really struggled in this one. I think it is fair to say that the 49ers lost that battle of the trenches. And again, I have to go back to them being battered, bruised, and certainly weakened by all of the travel throughout the preceding weeks. But Randon, you have called out the fact that the Rams were able to make adjustments on the defensive line, and that seemed to be a factor, the number of players playing in the box. How did you see the Rams adjustments really making the difference in this one?
Yeah, so from next gen stats, you see the Rams ran 60% or 63% single high, and they had a loaded box 49% of the time. So they took away the run, and they let Jimmy have the opportunity to beat him. And they got away from it in week 18. They didn't do it this time, and the run game was absolutely garbage. And if you look at the touchdown to Deebo Samuel, that's thrown a screen, a rudimentary screen, and Deebo Samuel did the rest of the work. So outside of an athlete making a play for himself, the Rams just tried to have Jimmy beat us, and it didn't work for them, or it did work for them. And so especially in crunch time, when you have 6 plays in the last 2 drives, negative yardage, you weren't able to get 1 yard on 3 plays, one being a punt eventually. But, I just think that they lost the trenches there. You saw big players like Williams and Lincoln Tomlinson get pressured more than they ever have all season. I don't think I've ever seen a game where Williams, I believe he gave up 5 pressures.
He did 5 pressures. And I mean, it was remarkable in comparison to the rest of his season.
And Jimmy didn't ever get sacked, which is weird. Like, you think with all those pressures and how much they were around the line of scrimmage, he didn't get sacked, but the ball, they were in his face all the time. They were in his face when it counted. And they stopped the run. I have the play-by-play up. I don't have the box score, but both Elijah Mitchell was under 2 yards per carry, right? 1.8, and Deebo was at 3.7. And they have to be effective by running the football in order for us to have the time of possession. And so, man, just with all those things and how they made adjustments, and if they would have stuck with this game plan in week 18, we wouldn't even have been in the playoffs. And so the fact that they had the cojones to do it again, and the Niners didn't make adjustments, or weren't able to, or tried to and failed. Hats off to the Rams. You got to give credit where credit's due. Hats off to their defensive coordinator, whose name escapes me at the moment. Is it Raheem Morris?
Yes.
Raheem Morris. DC,
yeah.
Yeah. And so, hats off to him. I think he was probably the best coach in this game. And so it was just bad. I mean, when your best offensive lineman gives up the most pressures, you really have to rely on everybody else. So.
Yeah. And I mean, as much as I would like to say, well, you can't let a guy who's out there allowing pressures and is injured to continue playing, there's no way, even in hindsight, that I would call for Trent Williams to be pulled out of that game, just because of the heart that it took to gut it out and to play in that one. To me, again, credit to the Rams for doing what they did, and the 49ers just were unable to capitalize on that. I thought that the Rams, again, came out and were the more physical team in this one. And they obviously set out to do that. The Rams, for the first time in months, practiced in pads throughout the week prior to the game. And the Niners hadn't practiced in pads for months as well. And they certainly didn't do so. But that was, you would have initially looked at that and been like, oh, the Rams are scared. The Rams are scared. They want to be the more physical team, but there's no way they can be. Well, they were. They came out and they pushed around in the trenches. And that, to me, ended up being the most critical component of the game was the 49ers' inability to get the push in the run game, get the run game going. And Jimmy was under duress all day, even though he wasn't sacked. You almost wish that last play had been a sack instead of the throwaway.
When you flip it around, though, we got to get to the other side of the football. Sorry, money shift. I didn't mean to cut your chat off there, but I think the other side of the football is prevalent as well. I mean, with Stafford dropping back 45 times, how are we not getting to the quarterback more? Like, I don't think Armstead even recorded a tackle in this game. And so big players have to make big plays at the time. And that goes for the defense as well. I mean, Bosa showed up 1.5 sacks. But Armstead, who's been playing well all the second half of the season, really nothing there. Ebukam got a half sack. I mean, your leading tackler is your corner. Whether that's because he was getting roasted all game in Ambry Thomas, I don't know. But you're not really putting tackles for loss. And we eliminated their run game too.
I mean, no doubt, only 70 yards.
Why weren't we getting home is more than what we were is another reason that we could have had a better outfit in this game.
Yeah, I mean, inability to get off the field on third downs was the biggest one for me. And that was something that the 49ers struggled with earlier on in the season. It seemed to be something that they had fixed more recently, but it reared its head yet again. And that inability to get off of the field led to an extended drive for the Rams in that first half. And Nick Bosa touched on it in the postgame presser that he usually doesn't feel it in his legs at the end of games, and he felt it in this one. So being out there on the field, I think, was the difference. And you can point to the inability to get off on third down, and then back on the other side of the ball, the 49ers' inability to run the ball and keep their defense on the sideline for a little bit to allow them to rest. All of that complemented to create an environment where the Niners did seem to lose the battle in the trenches on both sides. All right, money shift coming in. A lot of Jimmy's comebacks were caused by him putting us in a hole. He gets too much credit for the playoff wins. Glad he's gone. I mean, I respect the opinion, money shift, and I am excited for Trey Lance, no doubt about that. But I think that's generally the case, right? I mean, in order to have comebacks, you have to be down, and oftentimes there will be a mistake by the quarterback that contributes to that. I don't think it's fair to say that every game the Niners were down where Jimmy had his fourth quarter comebacks, that it was entirely because of him. I know that's a very popular narrative that's out there. There's a very popular saying around Jimmy being both the arsonist and the firefighter. And I get how kitschy that is and catchy and that, it makes a lot of sense. To me, that's a bit of an oversimplification that Jimmy is a very... In order to give the complete picture, you have to acknowledge his ability to commit the boneheaded turnovers and to do the positive things. And I think both are what make him the complete picture in who he is.
Yeah. Plus, you have pro athletes on the other side of the field. Like, they're playing against other quarterbacks and other wide receivers and other talent that are trying to win games as well. And sometimes those players just make plays. It's not necessarily, it's if a team scored every single drive, every single game, then we wouldn't be scoring 20-something points. That very rarely happens. And so the ebb and flow is there. And where I think Jimmy gets his biggest criticism is that the ebb the negative part rears its head too often. And there's lots of stalemates in the game. But you also have to, when the stalemate comes, you also have to give him credit for, like, after all that negativity throughout the game, clearing his mind and having those fourth quarter, last play drives or last drive plays in the game, because they both matter, and wins or W's, and how you get them done really doesn't matter. At the point is winning. I mean, we took the special teams touchdowns in Green Bay, and it didn't matter that Jimmy didn't play great. But now in a loss, people want to give it solely to him. But I mean, there was plenty of opportunities for the team to win this game, other than because of Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yes, lots of plays left on the field, and many of the people coming to the pressers, many of the players coming to the pressers said exactly that. Big Dez coming in. Niners already got potential at quarterback. One of the major keys in a rebuild that is the rebuild that right side of the offensive line. Rams took advantage of us there. Yeah, I mean, certainly when you cannot get the run game going, the right side of the offensive line becomes much more suspect for the San Francisco 49ers. When you have Brunskill and Tom Compton in obvious passing situations, specifically going against the team that is built to get after the quarterback, when you're in those third and long situations, that is a tall task for those two gentlemen. And so the game plan sort of failed them in that respect. Not the game plan, the execution of the game plan failed them in that respect. You would hope that the run game gets going at least moderately to where you're in third and mediums and a more manageable situation where you're not going to get that bull rush against the right side of the line. But I agree, you're going to need some depth there. I'm hopeful that McGlinchey, in coming back from the injury, gets us a little bit better there at right tackle. I am not harsh on McGlinchey as some may be. I believe what he does in the run game makes up for any deficiencies he has in the pass protection game. And then I'm not ready to give up on Aaron Banks yet. And therefore, do I think the 49ers need to invest in depth there? Yes. I'm not sure that I put it as one of their top priorities just yet.
Yeah, I like the conspiracy theory that the tinfoil hat there that Banks was drafted for the Trey Lance offense and they're going to run more power. I think that's interesting thought. I mean, we'll see if that happens there. But, down the stretch, whatever you give to PFF grades, they were number one in the run and 5 in the past with the backup right tackle and Tom Compton, who barely made the team. And so, like you drafted Jalen Moore and Aaron Banks. Will they get more opportunity next year? Will they be able to sign Laken Tomlinson? I don't know. There's plenty of more deficiencies on the team than just interior offensive line. I wonder if Alex Mack will come back, and Rob and I will be doing draft shows during the offseason. But I saw just in a brief check because I knew this probably would come up that there's 5 centers within the top 5 graded offensive linemen, depending on who you look at. And so maybe they draft a center in the second or third for the replacement of Alex Mack, going forward, and you have Banks there, and then the line is fixed with McGlinchey, depending on how long it takes him back to get from injury. So whether it's that or it's secondary, because we haven't had a secondary player drafted in the top 2 rounds since Jimmy Ward, there's plenty of teams and plenty of depth needed for this team. And so, I know that O-line was the biggest deficiency, but you also have 2 touchdowns to Cooper Kupp and another 100 yards from Odell Beckham in this game. And so maybe secondary is something to look at as well.
Yeah, and I think you just have to also look at the fact that this team only has 31 players signed. And so it's not just a matter of upgrading from what this team is that just lost. It is rebuilding a team, right? It is filling out 20 spots on a 53-man roster, 22 to be exact. Rob Smith coming in. Are Jalen Moore and Aaron Banks the answer? I actually really like Randon's suggestion of this year being the year to draft Alex Mack's replacement. And I think that it would be totally suitable to spend a 3rd-round pick on an offensive lineman that could potentially play guard at one of the 2 spots if you're unable to re-sign Laken Tomlinson, which I believe should be a top priority as a free agent. I would re-sign Laken Tomlinson. I would hope that Alex Mack can continue what he was able to do in the second half of this season once he got comfortable. My hope would be that Aaron Banks can compete for that right guard spot, but whomever you drafted in the 3rd at center could also compete for that right guard spot. And then you're hoping that McGlinchey rounds into form. And whomever you draft in that 3rd round to be that future center is also now a key depth piece for the 49ers. And Jalen Moore becomes your swing tackle, right? And so that to me would be comfortable depth in the way that would play out if the Niners invested some, but again, not a top priority, not a top 2 priority for me.
Yeah, we'll see how it works out. Laken Tomlinson's salary kind of escapes me of what I think maybe he might get on the open market, being that he's a Pro Bowl style guard this season. Will people or teams hold it against him that he was he was lined up next to the best tackle in football? Will that kind of be used as a bargaining point against him with the money there, the salary cap, which players want to come back, all that kind of stuff? I know that somebody in the chat said that Max got 2 more years on his deal, but he's old. Maybe he retires. Maybe they cut him because the dead money isn't that bad if they find something better There's plenty of options that could potentially happen. Whether they
I
do
think
that
I think it's a technicality too. I think he has a ghost year at the end of the deal. I think really he's only signed for next season. They added that extra year to prorate the signing bonus.
I think it says 2023, his base salary is $3.5 million. So, but the dead cap this year, if they just cut him, is 2.4. So it's not that much of a difference. You might get some, opportunities there, but you look what Creed Humphrey did for his team this year, and it was probably one of the best centers, if not the best center in football. And you do that for a rookie salary, you have more money to spend elsewhere, and see how that works out. So it all depends. Like, they have lots of options. I think Laken Tomlinson's very interesting in what he might possibly get at left guard and how the offensive line shapes up. But you can never have enough depth there, and having people earn spots and all that. And so I think, we'll get into the draft coverage later on in the offseason, but I think secondary and offensive line is where, the first of the two out of the three picks should go, at least to get some depth.
Yeah, I would go edge rusher and secondary cornerback would be my top two, and then third would be the offensive line. So my prediction is we get that second rounder for Jimmy, then you can use those 2 second rounders on an edge and a cornerback, and then third round go after that offensive line. All right, let's transition to our next topic here and get into just a nod to Deebo Samuel and how special that season was. It was heart-wrenching. I couldn't watch it the day of. I was obviously at the game. I was there at the end. I didn't notice Deebo still on the sideline. I didn't notice live Odell Beckham Jr. coming over to console him. I do have to say I have incredible respect for Odell Beckham in doing that, in coming over to console Deebo. He's not a player that admittedly I held in super high regard prior to that, but in watching that moment with Deebo Samuel, I lift him up, in my opinion, of OBJ. I just wanted to say that even though, you get what you earn, the Niners, They did let Deebo down in this one. He had such a special season. It felt like a season of destiny. It felt like one where he was going to will them to the Super Bowl, and to not get him involved the way in which they were unable to do in the fourth quarter really was a letdown, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, you fully expected him to get every single ball in the second half, and have him just carry them like he's done all year. And so, yeah, I mean, OBJ, whether that was just consoling maybe a friend that we don't know about. I mean, I haven't seen them be friends online or whatever, but you don't know the text messages that go on between players and that kind of thing. Or maybe he just respects Deebo's game and said, hey, man, like, you gave it all in the field, like you have nothing to be ashamed of, and that kind of thing. I don't really know. You just feel for a guy who has probably the best year of any Niners receiver ever in the history of the game. Over 2,000 yards total yardage, and all that kind of thing. Plus his touchdowns, and you can make that argument that he had the best wide receiver game or season of all time for the Niners, and just the amount of big plays, the long plays too. It wasn't just like he was getting the touchdowns all within the 5-yard line. Like, he was breaking off some 20 plus yarders all the time, and it just revolutionized. I think it revolutionizes the playmaker, archetype. If you go far back as playing video games for the NCAA game, you recruit athletes, right? And you decide where you want to put them. And he's really shown that you can be that. You can be a primarily receiver at the beginning of the season, move to running back, do a little bit of both. It'll be interesting and see how they talked about a little bit in the press conference and how he'll be negotiated with his contract. Will it be wide receiver or running back? He better hope it's a wide receiver, because running backs get treated like trash when it comes to contract negotiations. But they said they're going to do right by him. And if they plan on using him that way next year, they have to give him some insurance with the injury, with how much he's putting his body on the line, running through the tackles and everything like that. But again, I don't think I've ever seen a season as good as Deebo's this year from anybody wearing the SF on their helmet, and just tip of the cap to him. Like, it was very fun to watch, and he seems like such a good guy. And I'm just happy that he got this type of year, especially since most people were writing him off as a gadget player or a guy that only runs reverses at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, I agree. Wide back who also threw that one critical touchdown pass against these Los Angeles Rams. Do not forget that. I like James' idea here. OBJ is just telling Debo to put in a good word so that he can get signed by the Niners in this one. I actually think that would be, if you could get him cheap, if he wanted to be with San Francisco, as he has indicated in the past, and we're willing to take less money. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think he would be a very good complementary piece for this 49ers team.
Yeah, he would be, but if he showed up in this game, if he shows up in the Super Bowl with over 100 and a touchdown, he's getting at least probably 8-9 million, I would assume, on a 1-year deal with another team.
You would think so.
Yeah, just I mean they'll put up. I wonder if he'll be similar to like Antonio Brown, and the fact that teams will be willing to accept the potential locker room disturbance on 1, maybe 2-year deals for a chance to win because of the player that he is. But he might not get any 3 or 4-year deals at his age anymore. It'd be interesting to see where he goes and teams that'll put a word in for them. I know the overhaul with the Raiders and the fact that they lost Henry Ruggs to that unfortunate incident. They need wide receivers. Derek Carr likes throwing the ball downfield. Maybe that's the team that might look into it with the new management there with McDaniels as their head coach.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to monitor. Jonathan coming in. Debo is the best player in the NFL, in my opinion. What do you think about signing Mariota to back up Trey? I disagree. We need a better right tackle. I would suspect that the 49ers disagree as well. I think they probably will ride with Mike McGlinchey. I mean, he is on that 5th-year option of his deal. He probably will be healthy come next season, come the start of next season. It is a big injury, so there is that question. But as long as he's healthy, I would agree. The Niners believe that they are set at right tackle with Mike McGlinchey, at least for next year. And I also agree that Debo is one of, if not the best players in the NFL. Mariota, to me, seems a bit too expensive to bring in as the backup for Trey. Remember, we're clearing all of that money off the books from Jimmy because we need to fill out the roster with 22 more players. And so I think we will need to settle on more of a mid-level quarterback. And I think Mariota could end up earning himself a pretty nice payday for a backup/borderline starter.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what he wants. I mean, obviously, the intangibles are there with him being a running quarterback. I know, I don't know what his contract is. I didn't look it up because this, it's a super chat. But what's that guy for Carolina, like PJ Walker, like one of those guys that like have running capabilities. He was in the XFL. He was a backup there. He's a lot cheaper. I don't know if he's still signed this year, but I agree with you. I'd push the all in on the non-injury bug with Trey Lance, and to sign a backup that is somewhat capable and rely on the run game, because you want to put that money elsewhere. And the tackle question, they already signed his 5th-year option. I assume that he will be playing next year unless the quad injury is worse than we have, and then they'll probably have a swing tackle in Moore or Compton just in case, depending on how well that injury is healing up in the offseason.
Yeah, all that money is guaranteed for McGlinchey at this point. All right, let's transition to the graceful exit of Jimmy Garoppolo. Just a little nod to Jimmy for holding it all together through the end of the season. I mean, not a great game by him to end it. Not a terrible game either. Certainly not good enough. 16 of his 30 pass attempts, 232 yards, 2 touchdowns. And a game-ending interception, overall passer rating of 87.1. My point in this topic is how many other starting caliber quarterbacks in this league would have put up with the circumstances of this season, would have been such a decent mentor to Trey Lance, to where Trey Lance says in his exit interview, Jimmy's going to be one of my best friends for life. Would Rodgers have handled this scenario with any grace, right? You hear teammates talking about him. Trent Williams says, I think he handled the season amazingly. Nobody wants to be in the position he was put in, but you couldn't tell, man. Jimmy is a class act. He handled himself professionally every day. I'm proud of him, man. He's a brother for life. And that's the sentiment that I get from all of the players talking about him, was that he was a good locker room guy, a good leader. And I think that matters in a scenario where you could have had a cancerous situation devolve, especially once the Niners ended up at 3-5.
Yeah, there's a lot of things here. And I thought his exit interview was great. He did win an award from the journalist and the writers, as far as being one of the best players to talk to and conversate with him and Trent Williams,
Yep.
are co-owners of that award. I don't really know. I don't really remember off the top of my head. Has there ever been a controversy this big in my remembrance? I mean, you look at the Jordan Love, Aaron Rodgers. I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo never won an MVP or a Super Bowl, so you knew Aaron Rodgers was their quarterback until they decided to either trade him away. But he wasn't taking that job from Rodgers. All the other situations like Dak and Romo and Russell Wilson were won over by injury, and they never gave the ball. They never gave the job up. And so, having a top 5 pick, again, only 5 now with Trey Lance have played less than 4 games in their first season over the last 2 decades. And so generally those players are drafted to play, and, them walking the fence was probably pretty tough on Garoppolo. He said it made it clear for his vision this season on what he needed to do, knowing most likely that he'd be out. So there was really no pressure for him. All he had to do was go out and play his game and let whatever happens. But man, I think he did it gracefully. I think for the most part, didn't really say anything, never said anything bad about Trey. Shanahan said this was one of the best quarterback rooms he's ever been in. He said there's been some that he's been in that have been nasty. This one was not it. Trey Lance saying that they're going to be friends for a long period of time, and all those things. And then battling through injury in the playoffs to get multiple wins to the NFC Championship game. I really just got to commend him. And as we've seen in this chat tonight, we've seen it on Twitter. Like there's absolutely people that absolutely hate the guy. Like they absolutely cannot stand him. And I don't really remember a fan base being this divided in the quarterback room. And that's because of the personnel that's waiting in the wings. But let's bring it back to Garoppolo, in my little diatribe that I got going on here. I think that he's done a very good job. And, he was a part of some good teams, part of some team, a Super Bowl run. He's made some great plays, fourth quarter comebacks, part of some great teams or great games like with the Saints game and all that kind of stuff. And I'm just going to, I just got to thank him for showing me some good 49er seasons.
Yes.
I certainly didn't think that we would be where we're at 3-5 this season. I was, in fact, not wanting him on the team to start the season because I thought we should have went with Trey the whole game or the whole period. But you got to give him his due. He played well. He's been a class act. All his teammates like him. You see multiple players, Armstead, Juice, all posting things. Juszczyk said that he came up to him in the Rams game week 18, said, "Hey, this might be our last hurrah together, man. I really appreciate what you've done." And I think the sentiment that always stays with me in his interview was that I came to this place and I wanted to leave it better than when I came.
Yep.
And I think he certainly did that for the Niners.
I agree. And by the way, I just want to take a moment to say I was attempting to do a timeout on someone and I hit Mr. Cartier 7. Mr. Cartier 7, that was a mistake. It was meant to be a timeout on somebody else who was causing a little bit of kerfluffle in the comments, but I can't undo it. So it wasn't a block. You just time out, Mr. Cartier. My apologies. It was a slip of the wrist there. All right, let's transition this topic into the fact that you mentioned it. The ownership went out of their way to express their appreciation for Jimmy Garoppolo, as they should, because of the way he handled this situation, the fact that they rode this dual strategy of, hey, we're going to be relevant this year and we're going to develop Trey for the future. At some point this season, that looked crazy, but it turned out to be the right choice. And in this one, the angle being, well, just how appreciative will the organization be? Do you think that they allowed Jimmy to have any say in where he goes when they trade him this offseason?
I think based on the dynamics of what they've done for him so far, and then what kind of their tone in the press conference, I think he'll have some say. I don't think it'll be enough of a say to, like, say if the difference in the pick was a third to a second or a second to a first or whatever you think he's getting. Like if the bundle is a lot better for the Niners, I don't think he'll have that much sway. But if the compensation is similar and he has the choice between two teams, I think they'll give him that option. Do you?
In that particular scenario, yes, I agree. If there were two teams with relatively similar offers and the Niners are attempting to decide between the two, I do think they would consult with Jimmy. Otherwise, I think no. I think the Niners will negotiate a deal. I do think Jimmy will get what he's looking for, though. But I don't think it will be because the Niners are doing him any favors. I think Jimmy will get to go to a winning team because I think that's the only team that's really going to be interested in Jimmy Garoppolo. If you're completely rebuilding, Jimmy's not your quarterback, right? Yeah. I mean, you're attempting to bring in someone, you draft high, you bring in a quarterback that has bigger upside potential. But if you're a team, why I keep going back to the Pittsburgh Steelers, if you're a team that is in it every single year and you've got a good defense, you've got a solid run game, at least a portion of your offense is centered around quick passes. To me, that's a fit. You bring in a good locker room guy like Jimmy Garoppolo, a veteran with a good presence who can clearly win a lot of games if he has the right people surrounding him. To me, that's the type of team that is going to be pursuing Jimmy. So I think he gets what he wants, but I don't think it's because the Niners really concede that. I think it's just the nature of those will be the teams interested in Jimmy.
Yeah, I mean, I know he has he doesn't have a no trade clause or anything like that, or so they could trade him to the Jaguars for all he cares, but which they wouldn't. I mean, Trevor Lawrence is there, but yeah, I think you're right. I think overall, a team that is contending or wants a bridge for the next year or two to see what they're doing with their franchise would be the teams that are interested in him. You might see a team like the Bucs be like, okay, well, let's bring him in for one season. We have Kyle Trask, who's a second-round pick. Maybe he's not ready. We want him to have another year behind a starter. Jimmy Garoppolo takes over a Super Bowl contending team, and they try to win with him. Steelers are there. The Broncos would have to dump some of their quarterbacks. I don't know what their salary looks like with those quarterbacks, but Broncos are certainly an option. And then there's teams that have quarterbacks that might be traded, like the Packers or the Seahawks, and you might see something there. I mean, those are long shots in my opinion, but yeah, I mean, I think he goes to a contender or somebody who needs a bridge that has salary cap, that doesn't really care about his contract. The question for me though is, will the Niners opt to take some of his salary, maybe not half, but maybe 10 million of it or 5 million of it from another team to get a higher pick? We'll see if they negotiate that salary to help get a better asset, and going forward. But I think that Jimmy will have more say in where he goes, as long as the package isn't completely overwhelming. The Niners really don't have a choice, and they have to take it.
Sure, that makes sense. I would guess the Niners eat zero of that salary based on the salary cap figures. Yeah. I think that the money will be more important than the higher draft pick, but just my gut instinct there. Jonathan coming in. People that hate Jimmy ask why his teammates love him. I think it is clear that his teammates do love him. I think that the calming presence, the ability to deliver in clutch moments, all of those things to anyone that looks at Jimmy without emotion, when they take emotion out of it, and when they clearly analyze the entirety of his game, and when they're not trying to create a soundbite, when they're actually trying to put together a cohesive argument as to what type of quarterback Jimmy is, I think it's indisputable that he is both good and bad in areas. And so it's easy to see why a teammate would appreciate his skill set. And on top of that, him just being a good guy in the locker room.
Yeah, I agree with that too. And I think also, like, when you think back on like your best moments with your boys or your friends or whatever, like maybe when you're deep thinking, some of the negative stuff comes in, but most of the time you think when they were ride or die, when they were there for you with the good times, when they came big for you in a certain situation, and that's why they become your best friends. And for players like Kittle and Juice, who have been there the whole time he's been there, and they're pretty much the worst team in football in 2017 to the Super Bowl in a couple of years. That weighs big. And when you have people fighting in the trenches with you, and you're building the team up from the ground, I think that weighs heavy in a lot of the people in the locker room.
Yeah, that is fair. It is definitely, this was an emotional season. You could tell it on Coach Shanahan. You could tell it on Kittle. The people that wear their emotions on their sleeve, it was most obvious. All right, let's transition that one to a brighter topic. Let's get some sunshine and rainbows going here because it is Trey time. Obviously, this is not official yet. There'll be all sorts of speculation that will occur as to when will Jimmy Garoppolo officially be moved. No matter what we hear, the move cannot take place until after March 16th at 4 p.m. That is apparently the deadline for the league year, right, where all of the 2021 contracts expire. That is also when Jimmy Garoppolo's trade clause expires, so he will have no legitimate say, no contractual say in where he goes. The 49ers may do him that courtesy, as you suggest, Randon, and I think, again, that is a distinct possibility, but it looks like that's a foregone conclusion. When you ask Jimmy Garoppolo, is this the end? And is there a chance you can come back? And he smiles and laughs the way he did in the presser. It is over. So in my book, it is Trey time. And so it's about getting into reasons for optimism in 2022. And just quickly, high level, he was drafted when he was 20 freaking years old. He's still just 21 years old. He was the youngest quarterback in the NFL this year. Niner faithful should take that into account when looking at the reasons that he was held back this year, right? Why we didn't throw him into the fray, why the decision was, let's get him some seasoning, let's allow him to catch up to the speed of the NFL, let's allow him a full offseason to work on his throwing mechanics, as is the plan going forward, because he had so little experience in college, incredibly young, very raw, but to me, that's a good thing. To me, the fact that he's raw, that he has all those physical gifts, that's what I'm so excited about.
Yeah, you just see it. He had the best game for any quarterback in the last 3 years with throwing the ball downfield against the Texans. You like the raw physical attributes. You like the ability for him to make plays when things break down. And so if we're just talking about all the positives here, which we like to do on Between Two Beers, is keep it up. The sky's the limit. I mean, you're talking about a guy who can throw the ball downfield, a guy who can get outside the pocket, a guy who ran for over 1,000 yards in college, which I don't want him running that much as Lamar Jackson on this team.
No,
but just the ability to get outside the pocket, his big frame, shaking off tacklers when things break down and creating things there. I really like, and I think the biggest asset that he has is his head on his shoulders, right? I think you saw it in the press conference that, Shanahan keeps I don't like the way Shanahan keeps saying that he's young because we know his age. Like, let's move on from that. I think it's kind of a dig at this point. But his mental capacity there is off the charts. They said it in the combine. He knew the playbook by earlier in the season. All the offensive linemen say that he commands a huddle well. A lot of players were liking the ball, the way he throws the downfield. And so there's lots to be excited about. And then I think the number one thing for me too is the rookie deal, right? $20 million in assets in, a cap strapped year from COVID. It's still just because we're not heavily in COVID this last year, doesn't mean that doesn't ring through this year. Like, they're only going to increase it by the revenue change. And so, that 20 something million is going to help. I know a portion of that's going to go to a backup, but so we'll say 20 million flat. I mean, with 20 million, you can get Marshawn Lattimore an all pro corner and have him and Mosley opposite of each other and maybe Ambry in the slot. I mean, you're talking about taking away the receiving threats in the NFC West. Like, there's tons of stuff there that can go on. And I think everything is a positive there. I think the only thing that scares people, which, I'll just touch on is his lack of experience. But the only way to do that is give him more games.
Yeah, I disagree slightly in Shanahan continuing to say Trey's young and he needs that seasoning. I think he's speaking to the faithful, and I think it's needed. I think that there was a lot of irrationality this year from people around what they expected out of Trey. And I say that because I think next year there will need to be patience for him as well. I cannot allow the Niner faithful to get after Trey in the way that they criticized Jimmy Garoppolo this year. It frustrated me when it happened to Jimmy, and it will frustrate me when it happens to Trey. And I know that's the nature of the NFL. You know, you are under a magnifying glass. But I do think that it's paramount people remember just how young Trey Lance is, and that it will be a learning curve for him. So I appreciate that Shanahan keeps throwing that out there, but I continue to be optimistic about it. Let's talk a little bit.
The Shanahan must be on Twitter, because I think the extremist is what really gets people, because it's like you have people saying that Jimmy's a third string quarterback and he should be, and all this kind of stuff like that. And you have people like, oh, Trey Lance is going to throw for 5,000 yards and 50 touchdowns and lead us to a Super Bowl, no interceptions in the playoffs. He can turn water into wine and all this kind of stuff like that. And it's like, dude, just pump the brakes 1 second. Like, he's played like 2.5 games.
Yeah.
There's those types of people for both sides. The clinically sane people in the center realize that there's going to be some ups and downs next year. And I think maybe it's just a perturb for me. And maybe you're 100% right that Shanahan wants to pump the brakes so that the expectations are a little bit moderated next season, because people had to wait an extra year to watch this kid play. But maybe it's just me, a personal perturb on the way he said it, I guess.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the game plan for Trey, and talk about the timeline and what's going on in this offseason. How do you see this as Coach Shanahan talked about it?
Yeah, so they said Trey's going to take some weeks off, which is well deserved. He's been going nonstop since the draft season, since he declared, right? Multiple times thrown in front of coaches, working with multiple QB coaches to put as much stuff on film because of the lack of the COVID year, and then going straight into a rookie camp, OTAs, training camp, the season, learning our offense, learning the practice squad, the opposing team's offense every week to run the practice squad. Going through the playoffs, yada, yada, yada. Like, the kid needs a couple of weeks to breathe. And so I think the whole team's going to do that. But then they said they're going to send him down to Southern California. They didn't mention which throwing coach it was. I don't remember. I don't recall. But they're going to go to a throwing coach. He's going to be working on mechanics. And he said that 80% of the quarterbacks in the league do it. So it's not just because he believes that Trey's mechanics are bad. It's just something to go back to the basics. I played baseball in my life. Sometimes a good set of tee work is good for you to get back to the fundamentals. And so he's going to be doing that for, I believe he said, a month or several weeks to a month. And then it's going to be OTAs and all this kind of stuff where Jimmy's going to be the main guy, or not Jimmy, but Trey's going to be the main guy. And that's what he needs, is reps. So now he's going to be working one-on-one with Kyle through all these things. He's getting all the majority of the reps. All the attention's going to be on him. There's not going to be any how's your relationship with Jimmy talk? What are you learning? Or how this guy's or house camp? Do you like being a pro? Like, all the cookie cutter questions. It's going to be like, hey, are you handling your business? Are we going to win games this year? Like, he's really going to have to get into it. And I think that's a good timeline. I think that's appropriate for him. I don't know about you.
No, I like the timeline, and I do think, to me, that's the advantage of him not playing a whole lot this season, is that he didn't form any bad habits when it comes to his throwing motion, because that is, quite honestly, the area where it feels like the most work has to be done for Trey Lance. I was at the Seattle game there in person, and as I was watching him warm up on the sidelines there, that was something that I noticed, that he seemed to be in his own head when he would be in that four-man rotation of Jimmy throwing to the receiver handing to Trey throwing to the receiver on the other side. I saw him miss that receiver high, and this is, they're standing 10, 12 yards apart at that point, missed the receiver high pretty badly on a couple of those throws, and then could tell that he was attempting to get the motion down. He would then work with his elbow and try to get the flick of the wrist, the pop from that release. And I do think that he attempted to change that from college to try and shorten his throwing motion. The more reps he can get doing that when he's not under fire, to me, the less likely he is to revert to the old throwing motion. And so playing sparingly this year and using him in the way that we did set that up for this offseason. That's the focus. He can spend time with Brandon Ayuk. I hear Debo will make it his way down to Southern California there at some point as well. And so to me, this is the perfect setup for Trey to hit the ground running come training camp and just own the offense. I'm very pleased with the game plan for Trey Lance at this point.
Yeah, I think it's going to be good. And you look at getting more reps is one thing, and then getting more reps under pressure. People revert to uh, to bad habits when they're put under duress, and so you want this throwing motion to be second nature for him. And the more reps he gets, the better. And then you listen to quite a few quarterback coaches online at different websites or YouTubes, and they talk that quarterbacks, not only have one quarterback coach, but they talk to many about not only the throwing motion, but philosophy and steps and different way of doing things. And it's the same thing when I was pitching, right? There's more than one way to throw a slider. There's more than one way to throw a curveball. And you got to find out what works within the motion and the tempo of your game and your stride. And that's just going to come with reps.
Agree with that. Just a reminder to those that joined the stream later, we are doing a giveaway at the end of this one. We are giving away a mug here at the end of the program. Gonna be a beautiful giveaway to somebody. A trivia question will be asked at the end of the program, and you need to email 49ers mailbag. Let me put this up so you can see it. The mug giveaway. We'll be emailing the answer to 49ersmailbag@gmail.com. That's going to be coming at the end. I always throw this out there. If you enjoy the content, please do hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, consider becoming a member of the Sneakerhead community. Follow Randon over on Twitter. His information is down in the description of the video as well. But stick around to the end for that mug giveaway. Let's go into our next topic. We only got a couple of more before we get to that mug giveaway, but let's just go over the situation for the 49ers coordinators. Obviously, Mike McDaniel, the offensive coordinator, is the undecided one. So let's punt that to the second. Talk first about DeMeco Ryans and his decision to stick around with the 49ers. It looked like he was going to be up for the Minnesota Vikings job. Now it seems that is going to be Jim Harbaugh who takes that position. Most likely.
He just said no before we got on.
Did he really? He said he's out?
He informed Michigan he'll be back. Yeah.
Wow. I wonder who they will get now. That's interesting. Okay, well, let's set aside the Harbaugh news and talk about DeMeco. I love the fact that he is coming back to finish what he started. To me, this is a commitment to the players. It's a commitment to his own personal growth. It's the right way to do things. I am so pleased with DeMeco's decision here. It raises my opinion of him as a coach and as a human being for sticking it out. I think if he had won it all, if we had won the Super Bowl, he could have gone off and it would have been mission accomplished. But because they didn't, him coming back to me says a lot about his character.
Yeah, I mean, the way he coached this season, he was probably deserving of a head coaching job. I know that would be a rather quick ascension throughout the coaching ranks. But I think the way people talk about him, how his coaches talk about him, how Fred Warner talked about him, the overall demeanor of how his character is probably worthy of head coaching job. And it looks like Esai Chris said the same thing. I saw something come up in The Athletic. It's looking like the lead for the Minnesota job is going to be the Rams offensive coordinator, which I don't know how you're able to confirm that with him still being in the Super Bowl, but I think it's leaning towards that way. Anyways, getting back to DeMeco Ryan, I think his character says a lot about him. The way he pretty much took a scrap heap of secondary characters for the most of the season to turn the defense into a top 10 defense with that secondary says a lot. The way the coaches and the teammates speak about him, you're looking at something that easily could be what you're looking for in a head coach, right? Because character and culture are huge things in locker rooms. Not having a good culture is toxic to players, to free agents, et cetera, et cetera. And so to have him come back and learn one more year and be a part of this, and for him to say, no, like, I feel like I need to grow more. Like, he didn't really say that, but that his decision said that, like, I need to grow more as a person. And I have unfinished business here as a defensive coordinator before I take that next jump. Just kind of shows me that he really takes his job seriously. And because that's a big opportunity for him to get a head coaching job, because they don't come around very often. And you might only get one or two shots at it in your entire life. And for him to turn down that opportunity to refine his skills says a lot about him.
Yeah, I agree. It says a whole lot about him. Now, flip the script to the other side. Mike McDaniel is still in the running, you would think, for the Miami job. Although, interesting news coming out with the Brian Flores lawsuit. You would wonder if that would cause Mike McDaniel to have second thoughts about it. When you consider both sides, number one, there are only 32 positions possible for head coaching within the NFL. And a lot of those are locked down. So it's a very finite number of jobs that become available. On the other side of it, you often only get one shot at it, right? I mean, unless you are the next great thing, very few of these head coach candidates get multiple bites at the apple. And so if you're potentially going to a poorly run organization, and everything that came out in that lawsuit seems to indicate what I think most of us would have said off the cuff about the Ross run Dolphins organization, is that it's not one of the premier franchises in the NFL because of ownership, because of that fact. So to me, and I think I'll throw out there that after the pandemic, I think there's been a shift nationally of people giving greater credence to the idea of being happy where you work, of working for quality companies, of enjoying the people that you surround yourself with. Because as an NFL coach, you're working 100+ hour weeks. You better damn well enjoy the people that you work with. So my thought is that he may have some second thoughts about taking that position. But people are quick to point out that when you only have 32 available teams, nobody passes up an opening. What does your gut tell you? Will he get offered? And if offered, does he take it?
Yeah, it's a tough sled. I think I think if I were McDaniel, you might go, okay, the culture in the Niners is a lot better. Shanahan said that, he's primarily the run game coordinator, with that title. But he does a lot of stuff in the passing game too. But do you think, hey, this offense is going to be better next year with Trey Lance, and I might have an opportunity at another job again? Or is this going to be, hey, I got to the NFC Championship as a coach this year. This might be the farthest we get for a while. Like, there's all those what ifs. And then, often with an organization that's poorly run, head coaches, even if you get hired, or like you look at the Texans, they're poorly ran. That head coach got one year, knowing that their team wasn't going to win any games. He got fired for performance. So
it's terrible.
So, there's no guarantee that McDaniel even goes further than that, right? What if a big head coach pops his head out and he wants to go to Miami? But, I think that if they make him a good offer, you almost have to go, just because you don't get very many options. You're going to get Tua. You're going to get one of the best rookie wide receivers. That team rambled off, I think, 7 straight wins to end the season, almost made the playoffs. So the pieces are there. If he can create a culture similar to San Francisco, maybe that's something that it appeals to him. And if he believes he can turn it around, the pieces are there. It's a lot better job than Houston. So as far as the talent that's on the team, I don't know. Do you bet on yourself and the team to be better? And so maybe there's a better job that opens up, or do you kind of take the opportunity and bet on yourself that you can turn it around for that organization?
Yeah, I would bet on myself and the fact that I'm from Shanahan's coaching tree, and that I will be a hot commodity at some point to someone again, and I would pass on the Dolphins. But I think the fact that he hasn't pulled himself out of it at this point probably lends itself to say that if he gets offered the position, he is probably going to take it.
Is there another coach in the running? I haven't heard of anybody else rumored for that job.
Nobody that I have heard specifically of. To be frank, I'm not completely following the Dolphins organization other than their interest in Mike McDaniel.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about some other future moves. The 49ers have a couple of guys coming up for big extensions, possibly. Nick Bosa and Deebo Samuel going to be certainly priorities to be re-signed in the offseason. What are your thoughts on, will they both be re-signed, and potential contracts for them both?
Yeah, I think they'll both be re-signed. It seems that they said, what is it? They've already allotted room for them, or what was the exact word? Something along those lines, where they pretty much said that they've already budgeted.
They've budgeted. Budgeted.
So I think that shows what it's going to be. I think that obviously Bosa has a little bit longer because the 5th-year option. So they don't necessarily need to get him done this offseason. I think Debo is the number one priority because of him being a second-round pick and no 5th-year option. I think his agent's going to be pushing for him to be paid like a wide receiver. I think that the team's going to say that you're a hybrid. But 2,000 yards is 2,000 yards any way you shake it. So it's going to be something that shakes out. I would say north of 20 mil is what I would guess from him. Maybe with his aggressive running style, the Niners would give him more money, but less guaranteed in case he gets injured. And then, the exact opposite is Debo's like, hey, I'm pushing myself in between the tackles. I'm going to want more guaranteed money. So, it might be the other way around. Maybe he gets 17 million a year and it's more guaranteed money. Maybe he's guaranteed anywhere from 14 to 15 million a year to where he's like, okay, like I'm taken care of, but I'll take less money. It'll be interesting to see what both sides value the situation at and value as a player. Yeah.
Yeah, I do think that he should be, if he and his camp are wise about this, they should be most focused on that guaranteed money. To me, that's what you want. You want to up the guaranteed money and forget about that big figure that wows everyone. But I do think it is going to be a big figure. When I tried to figure out the comp for this one, I went right back to the Michael Thomas contract. I think that you are looking at Deebo Samuel cresting 20 million. I would put his contract most likely at averaging out over 21 million over a 5-year period. But I do think the critical component to keep your eye on will be the guaranteed money. I expect it to be reasonably high in comparison to other deals. And then with Bosa, I agree. I think they lock down both. I think that's the ultimate priority. I don't think they push off Bosa because of that 5th-year option. I think you attempt to lock him down now to keep him satisfied. I think you have to look at what his brother brought in, right? Joey Bosa. He's going to want to one-up his brother who got a 5-year, $135 million contract, right? So $27 million a year on that one. I would guess that Bosa remains under the $30 million a year contract. I would put him, if as a guesstimate, at around $29 million for his contract. And I think both of these contracts will be heavily backloaded because of the fact that the salary cap explodes in 2023. And I'm glad that they are using some of that explosion to lock down high caliber players, because it is my prediction that in next offseason, in 2023, you will see a lot of bad contracts going out, much like you saw in 2016 in the NBA, where you had role players at the end of the bench making $10 million a year plus.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if typically the NFL is one-upping your opponent, and average salary for TJ Watt is 28 mil, Myles Garrett 25 mil. So to give Bosa $30 million when he wasn't to their caliber this year, I mean, he wasn't far off. But if it's just straight one-upping each other, you would probably see north of $30 million. If you're looking in comparison, I would say easily over 25, but less than 30, like what you said. He'll probably want $5 million. I would say the Niners would probably want an out clause halfway through with his injury history. Something along those lines. I don't think his contract gets done until next summer, though, with the 5th-year option.
You think that Bosa doesn't get done this year?
No, just because they don't have to, and so I think that. And then if you're Bosa and you're betting on yourself, like back-to-back healthy years gets you more money.
That's true.
So
that is very true.
If, do you bet on yourself, or you're saying, hey, like I've had so many injuries and the way I rush is so aggressive, I'll take less money now and get my contract done. If that's the way Bosa's camp is feeling about it, then you probably do get that done. Because if he's willing to sign at 23 million or 24 million, with the salary cap going up just to get that contract done, then you probably take that if you're the Niners.
100%. I can't imagine a scenario where Bosa gets paid less than, say, 27 million. Because those other contracts, even though they perform to those, it's always a matter of one-upping, right? Either the next guy paid, you got to have the biggest deal. And so his agent will hold out for that. And his agent will have that leverage of saying, well, we don't need to get a deal done this year. We're willing to wait until next year. It's you guys that want to lock it down before the cap explodes. Bosa, if he's confident he would stay healthy, I think you're right. He bets on himself and he says the cap's about to explode. I can get 33 million average per year if I just hold out, as opposed to taking 29 million average per year. And that adds up to a lot of cheese over a 5-year deal.
The big thing for the Niners, though, is like the two biggest names in the pass rushing world in TJ Watt and Myles Garrett already have their contracts locked down. And so like they're not getting, it's not like a quarterback situation where Dak and Wentz were like standing off with themselves.
Yeah, there's no
Fred Warner and Darius Leonard
first.
and Kittle and Kelsey. Unless there's another pass rusher that I can't think of that's due for a contract. The two big names that have already made their money. So maybe waiting would only be for the cap raise. But I would guess right around 27.5. I think he'd be right in line with what they made. Maybe kind of just the pettiness of make like kind of, making like, $10,000 more just to say you're the highest paid guy.
Right.
But
right.
I think it'd be somewhere around that section.
I love how people do get into that pettiness. I loved Trent Williams and the fact that he needed to be number one. I love it. Absolutely love it. All right, let's close out on this last topic before we get to this mug giveaway that is coming up at the end. And let's just talk about any regrets. Should the 49ers, head coach, organization, players, should they have any regrets about how this season played out?
I don't think so. I think they had their game plan. They stuck to it. And they made it farther than every other team besides two. And, and when you look at it that way, like you signed the players that you signed, you gave money to Trent Williams, phenomenal season. You gave money to Fred Warner a couple years ago, phenomenal season. You bet on Debo coming back and not using him as a gadget guy, using him all over the field, phenomenal season. You drafted Elijah Mitchell, no fumbles this season, had a great year. You hit on Ambry Thomas towards the end of the season. You bet on Mosley. So there's a lot of things there. Yeah, there were some bad picks. Maybe Banks is one. Trey Sermon might be another one. Like didn't really get the run that both I thought he would get. I drafted him in fantasy to be that guy. So yeah, there's always going to be negatives throughout the year, but overall, you look at total performance of the team. I don't think they regret much of anything. They went with a plan. They stuck to the plan. And I think if they went 3-6, I think you would have saw Trey, but they backed up to a corner and they rambled off some wins and stuck with it. And ultimately, like I said, only two teams were better this year.
Yeah, I think you're spot on that had things gone slightly different, had they lost one more game and the wheels come off, there could have been a lot of regrets because the 49ers bet on a strategy that had a lot of risk involved with it. The idea of keeping Jimmy Garoppolo, paying him an exorbitant salary to be your starting quarterback while also simultaneously investing an incredible amount of draft capital into a very young, raw, inexperienced rookie quarterback, and then attempting to keep both on the roster and play this game was a dangerous scenario. It was a tightrope act, and it was one where the 49ers sitting at 3-5 were wobbling on that tightrope and almost fell off. And if they had, this would have been a completely different take, right? We would have potentially been talking about a lot of regrets. As it stands right now, I believe that the 49ers should hold their head high. Absolutely. They did what they intended to do this season, which was be relevant, compete in the playoffs, and still have a good season of development for Trey Lance. Protect him and allow him to come back next year and be the starting quarterback. To me, this team showed heart the entire season. They came through for one another. The locker room stayed together. There's development of key players. You listed off a great number of them in what you were sharing. And yes, were there a couple of misses in the draft? Absolutely, that's going to happen every single year. Some of those may still pan out as we go into the Trey Lance era going forward next year. To me, this team should have their head held high. Nobody needs to hang their heads in shame after that finish. They exceeded most expectations. When they got to 3-5, I think most people changed those expectations. When I look at my expectations prior to the season, I had them right about where they ended up. I thought this was a playoff caliber team. I thought they had a chance to make a run, and they absolutely did. You can't tell me that it wasn't a close game against LA. You can't tell me that if there weren't 3 plays that happen differently, that the Niners aren't in the Super Bowl with a chance to win it. And at the beginning of the year with this roster, that was all that I hoped for. And so I'm proud of this team. I think that it's a season I will remember fondly. It's certainly one that stings right now, but it also came with a lot of special moments.
Yeah, I mean, you go to the hypotheticals. If I were to tell you back when we were 3-5, hey, I know it seems bad right now, but I guarantee you I have a crystal ball. We make it to the NFC Championship. Just hold on. You'd be happy with that, I think. Like, and so with not knowing how that shapes out, you happy with it? I know there's tons of people in here like, oh, well, like we could have done the same thing with Trey Lance, or we could have done this, or hypothetical this, hypothetical that. But ultimately, the season shaped out how it did. We won more games than we lost. We went farther in the playoffs than a lot of people gave us credit for. I know most people saying that Jimmy wasn't going to be able to get us past the wild card game. And you and I were advocating on here that we could beat anybody when it comes to it because we keep games close. So, the future is good. They should be able to re-sign most people. The Trey Lance thing, as we talked about, and ultimately NFC Championship. Not a lot of teams get to experience that, let alone in their entire history of their franchise, let alone this year. So, I'm just thankful for the season. I really had a good time watching it. Granted, I was one of the only Niner fans multiple times, but I found myself a little DFW Niners pocket, and I'm proud to go watch games with them this year. And it was just really nice, wearing that jersey with pride, being able to talk with you every week for the second half of the season about this team, getting to know a lot of the Niners faithful on Twitter and through this podcast. So my fandom has definitely grown. The season was a good one, and I'm just grateful to be a part of it this year.
Yeah, me too. You echoed a lot of sentiments that I feel as well, and I do want to mention that this season provided, a new platform for me in creating this channel, and it allowed for you and I to come together and create Between Two Beards, and I couldn't be more grateful for that. Again, something positive to hang our hats on. Well, it has come to that time, and it was a long episode, and so those of you that stuck around are rewarded by the fact that it was a long episode. So this is the mug giveaway. You are going to want to email your answer to 49ersmailbag@gmail.com. That way it will be time-stamped. It will come in the order that it's received. And the first correct answer that has their address in there that says where this mug is going to need to be mailed to is going to get this mug right here. It is brand new, unused. Don't you worry about that, but it's still dishwasher safe, so you can throw it in the dishwasher when you get it home to make sure it doesn't have my cooties on there. Still got that NFL hologram down there on the bottom. This mug will be yours if you can get this trivia question right first. It's a nod to the man, the myth, the legend, Deebo Samuel. For the season that he put together, he deserves to be the focus of this trivia question. How many total yards did Deebo Samuel have this season? Total yards for Deebo Samuel. Send that in to 49ersmailbag@gmail.com. The winner gets this mug. Should we hold off and announce it next week on the program, Randon, or is that just too cruel? Should it be tomorrow on the program?
Hey, man, they're your fan base, man. I know it's Between Two Beards. I'm just latching on to this parade, but I'd say give it away. Somebody needs a mug. It might be getting cold in the winter. You need some good coffee. Send it away.
I like that. All right. It will go out. I will respond by email to the winner. Everyone who puts it in is not going to get it. Again, for anyone who is asking, anyone putting it in the chat is just giving away answers, or maybe giving away incorrect answers there. But you need to email 49ersmailbag@gmail.com. Deebo Samuel's total yards on the season. All right, I will email the response back to the winner to let them know. I will announce it on the channel tomorrow on my program. I have my Sneakerhead call-in show at 4 p.m. And next week, we will call it out as well, so that on Between Two Beards, we celebrate the winner of the mug. Randon, it's sad that this is the end of the season, but it's just the beginning of the off season. We will be back with draft coverage, combine coverage, free agency coverage, you name it. I'm going to be at the draft in Las Vegas. I don't know, maybe we'll convince Randon to get out there as well. To be determined, but it will be an exciting off season. I look forward to continuing between two beards with you, good sir.
Yeah, it might be the end of the 49ers season, which is just the beginning for us, my friend.
That is correct. All right, I will be back on tomorrow at 4 p.m. with the Sneakerhead call-in show. If you want to call in on that one, you have to be a member of the Sneakerhead community, but I will be developing a call-in show for everybody in this offseason. All right, cheers to well, as I say always, until next time, 49er faithful, cheers.